Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for giving us some of your time today on this very important topic, Find Your Perfect Fit, Researching and Applying to College with a Disability. We unfortunately only have an hour, so we're not going to be able to get to all the topics that need to be addressed with this, but we want to give everyone who's attending an opportunity to get some information about things to think about and things to question or ask questions about when you're looking at schools or you're thinking about going to post-secondary education and training. We have Katie Russell, Cassandra Jones, and Maria Shino. If I mispronounced that, I apologize. For our presenters, they have a wealth of knowledge and experiences, and we're going to have them introduce themselves. And let's get this party started. A couple of housekeeping tips. This is listen only mode. We will, you can put questions in the chat and we'll answer those as we go through the presentation. If they're directly related to a topic that was discussed, we'll answer it then. We can also answer some of them at the end. Clearly, there's not going to be enough time to answer every question, but I will be collecting all the questions and putting together a tip sheet after this with some of those answers to those questions that get often asked. Real-time captioning, the link for the external site, if you want to adjust the visual display of the captions, is in the chat. I'll post it one more time. And yes, everyone is in listen only. And resources will be posted during the session in the chat features. I will also be emailing out some additional resources after the session. And the recording will be emailed out to everyone after the session once we've confirmed the interpreters and the real-time captioning are included on the recording. Give us about 2 weeks to get through all of that. Okay, next slide. I want our presenters to go ahead and introduce themselves, and then we'll get started with the conversation. Over to you guys.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Russell. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm a college senior at Damon University, which is a small university in Buffalo, New York. I'm majoring in natural sciences. I've been doing disability education stuff, advocacy stuff for a couple of years now. I am a person with a disability. I have dysgraphia and ADHD, so both learning disabilities, visible disabilities. And I have brown hair and a pink shirt and pink flower earrings.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cassandra Jones. I'm the Director of Accessibility and Disability Resources at Xavier University, and I've been in higher education for about 20 years, working within disability services and with students who need accommodations.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maria Shiano. I'm the Director of Accessibility Services at the County College of Morris in New Jersey. I am also a Director at Large for the AHEAD Association, which is the Association of Higher Education and Disability. I've worked in higher education disability for about 18 years. I am a disabled white queer woman. I have long brown hair. I'm wearing glasses and have a white collared shirt on with a colorful jacket.
So as we look at researching and going to college with a disability, I would like our panel to talk about what is the first thing college students or high school students with a disability should be thinking about when they're thinking about post-secondary education and training. What is most important that they should be looking at?
Well, I'll go ahead and get started. Some of the first things a student should be considering is, do you want to live away? Do you want to live close to home? Do you want to attend a large school, small school? Does the school have the major that you're seeking? And also looking at what type of disability services support they have.
Yeah, so I will kind of jump on this as, like I said, I'm a college senior, so I've been there. I've done the college search. I did it during COVID, so it was a little different, but I'm now doing it again as I search for graduate school. A lot of the first thing that kind of, beyond even just disability is, can you imagine living somewhere? So I'm from Texas originally. I'm now in Buffalo. Those are two very different places, even just climatically. Buffalo gets a lot of snow. That was a thing that I was like, okay, if I'm going to go here, I got to think, will this be okay for me to deal with? Because like you're living there for 4 years or wherever you go. But also like, how big do I want to go? I knew that I wanted to go to a smaller school because I like smaller class sizes. And for me, I felt like that would be easier for me to know my professors, to make sure my professors understood my accommodations and my needs. And so that would just be easier for me. I liked smaller classes. I got smaller classes in COVID, just with how that all happened. And so I purposely looked for smaller schools, as well as figuring out what did I even want to do. And I think that's like the ringing bell question. It's always like, what are you going to do? And you're, like, I don't know. I was like, I like earth stuff. And that's kind of how I ended up in environmental science. And now I'm doing geology and geoscience for a master's. Like I'll go into that for a master's. So I kind of was like, sure, I like these things, but I also equally almost ended up in journalism. It was solely based on what did I think I liked and what could I see myself doing? Did I want to talk to people? Did I want to go out, be in an office, that sort of thing? For me, I was like, I like nature stuff and I want to be outside. Currently, obviously, I'm in a lab, so I'm not always outside, but figuring out what I was kind of interested in, resources wise, and then looking at, okay, which schools have, could I imagine myself living there? Is it the size that I want? Is it big or small? My brother goes to a very large university because he wanted to, have a bunch of options, know a bunch of different things. And does it have the programs I'm interested in? And even if you don't know what you want to go into, do they have multiple programs that you're interested in? So, like I mentioned, I like journalism, but I also like science. So like the school that I went to had if I end up hating science, evidently I didn't, but if I ended up hating it, I had an option to switch without transferring schools completely. And you can transfer. That was what my mother told me because I didn't visit my university before I committed because COVID. You should definitely try and visit the university you're interested in, just so you can get a feel, accessibility wise, like what does that look like? But also just do you feel like, oh, I could be here? Like there's things that I'm interested in. So having a variety of like different things you might be curious about and visit your school. Do that before you commit. I highly recommend it.
Hi all. Words of advice, I tell students to write down their top 5 things about what they're looking for their college experience. So size, location can certainly matter. What's the economic status that you will need to have, or will this impact your choice, right? Do they give scholarships? Do they give funding? What does financial aid look like? I always say definitely visit because it's really important. I used to work at New York University in the middle of Manhattan, and I can't tell you how many phone calls we received from parents saying, what's the crime rates in Manhattan? And this was for a student that was coming from Idaho. And so very different type of conversation if you've never been to New York, right? Just demographic wise. So things to consider. I would also say major is very important, but also what's the end goal, right? So maybe the start is not a 4-year option. Maybe the start is community college because it may be you have the ability to get your feet wet, right? To try out some types of classes, to see if college is for you before committing to the 4-year experience. So a couple of different factors. also, if you have health concerns or health needs, if you have any kind of disability related need, what does that look like in the state that you're looking at an institution, right? If you need sign language interpreters and you're applying to a school that's basically in a rural area, what's that access look like, right? So I say write down the top 5 things, do the research around those things, and then go from there.
Absolutely. 100% agree. And
Yes.
I will say, obviously, as someone currently in school, finances were the number one reason why I ended up in New York. I didn't even think I was going to end up at Damon, because I was like, oh, I applied because it hit my criteria, but I didn't think much of it because I was really interested in the one school I got to visit before, the world shut down with COVID. And so, of course, naturally, I was interested in it because I got to see it. But then the finances came back and I was able to attend Damon, without, it was the most financially secure option for me. And so I ended up here and it worked out really well. But also because I had done, I wasn't just applying to like, oh, they have a free app, they have a free application. I had done research beforehand. So I knew at least that they had some of the minimum things that I was interested in that I needed, made that decision a little bit easier. It's like, okay, they have the program I want. I know, like they had their accessibility office I knew was pretty good from people I talked to. And so like those things that I was like, I need these before I apply, I'd already gotten those out of the way. So when it came back, I was like, oh, it wasn't just, free application on Common App, which is like the major way a lot of schools have their applications that you can apply through. Fantastic, by the way. It's great. You don't got to rewrite a bunch of stuff. But, if all that stuff, like Maria was talking about, you figure it out beforehand. Just what are the big things that you need? Everything else can kind of be secondary.
And something I thought of as Maria and Katie were talking, one thing I forgot to tell you, I am disabled myself. I'm blind. I have no vision. So I am a Braille user and I use a screen reader. But in terms of looking for colleges, if you are someone that will be using any kind of mobility device to navigate, look, really visiting that campus to determine, like, is this a place where I'd be able to navigate relatively easily, or is it going to be in the big city? Maria was talking about New York University. Is it getting around? Are you going to be able to navigate independently? So thinking about those things and making sure you're researching that as well.
I think another top thing that's asked, and I would say it's mostly from parents or guardians or family, is the disclosure piece about disability. We'll talk more a little bit about the laws, but I mean, discrimination is discrimination. So technically, no college application can ask about your disability status. Some students choose to disclose within their personal essays, and they talk about maybe the challenges that they've faced and overcome, things and strategies that have helped them succeed. They will also do, let's say, if you're not really great at standardized testing, they may speak to that and say, well, this is how I'm qualified in other ways. So I think that there's always a really good way to, hone in on what your disability identity is, and essentially what that means for you going forward. But I think disclosure can be vital for some students because they may feel if they're seeing in admissions that they're not being accepted, for some odd reason, maybe then they don't want to necessarily consider that institution. So you don't hear about that as much as you used to. I mean, I'm talking 10, 15 years ago where disability status was something of a concern. But nowadays in admissions applications, you're not hearing it as much.
And some schools have test optional where you
Yep.
don't have to provide standardized tests from the SAT or ACT. And there might be other criteria that they request, since you're not going to be submitting standardized test scores. So that's always something to look at as well. If you know that you don't test well, is this college or university test optional?
Yeah, and that's one of those things it's still hanging around. I bring up COVID a lot because that was my apply during COVID. What else can I do? And that was a really big benefit, I think, for people in my kind of grade like cohort, was didn't have to supply any tests. So people got into places that maybe wouldn't have looked at them otherwise, because testing isn't their strongest suit, right? Because testing is testing. Testing isn't everything, right? And so that is a big thing to think about, of which places offer these things, which places don't. What does that look like? Is it a public or private school? That's another thing kind of mention, is that don't just shy away from private school. I kind of did. I now go to a private school because they offered me more money than a public university. So that is a thing to think about. Like, what does that look like? And what, look into, financially what scholarships they might have, and would that cover what your, needs are in state or out of state? Sometimes it also depends on, the region that you're in. So my cousins live in Kentucky, but they live right on the other side of this border in Cincinnati. So they get in-state tuition for the University of Cincinnati because they're so close. So, there might be little things, like little details like that, just depending on where you are geographically.
Thank you, everyone. Those were really good, important tips. I just wanted to point out that on this slide, I included the photo from University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana campus of their accessible bus with two individuals who use manual wheelchairs riding on the bus, along with individuals without apparent mobility disabilities. Because when we talk about thinking about school with a disability, especially a physical disability, as Cassandra mentioned, not only is it the college class access, but it's also what does that school offer in terms of access to the general campus? How are you going to get across campus? How big is it? How small is it? As Katie mentioned, but also there are some schools that have some specializations. University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana has a specialized fee for service, but they work with individuals, a lot of individuals with physical disabilities who need personal care assistance. Wright State University in Ohio is another one where they have a program, fee for service, but where they will work with students who need personal care assistance on making sure that they have that on the college campus. It's not a requirement under the law. So if it's a physical disability, that's something to consider. Where are you looking at going to school, and what kind of supports do you need? So thank you. Anyone have anything else before I move on to the next slide? Because we could just spend the entire session just talking about identifying schools.
We're good.
Okay, so obviously going from high school to college, there's going to be some changes in how college classes are structured, what professors expect from students versus what K-12 teachers might expect from students. But I think one of the topics that may trip students and their families up is the way that the laws are applied. So can we talk a little bit about the laws and how that applies to those changes that happen from high school to college? And what does that mean for the student as they go off to college?
Yes, so this has always been a very popular question among families when they're looking at colleges for their students with disabilities. So once you graduate from high school, the IDEA, those supports and that IEP and our 504 plan, those services end when you graduate from high school. So along with that is like the changes that go along with that. So now you have to establish accommodations at the college that you're going to be attending, which is under different laws, which would be Section 504, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and of course the Americans with Disabilities Act. And one of the major changes is that in K through 12, a lot of times the parents are the ones working with the school, the teachers, to make sure the student has the accommodations. But once you start college, that shifts to the student is now responsible for self-advocating and interacting with the Disability Services Office. And I'll stop there.
I think when it comes to the law, you know, students should know the relative differences between the IDEA, Individual Disability Education Act, than the ADA, American with Disabilities Act. And like Cassandra said, the differences between those laws really are, I think the biggest one, and where it usually is for most students, the biggest concern is in high school or in the K through 12 system, there is a guaranteed success, right? A student is guaranteed success. They will move forward and they will graduate high school. And there are different rules and stipulations dependent on which state you're in. But when you move over to the American with Disabilities Act and Section 504 as it applies in the post-secondary phase, is that there is no guarantee of success, right? So students have the right to fail, which sometimes becomes the biggest shock, right? Because they have always passed in the K through 12 setting. The other difference is the difference between accommodations, which is the major, I would say, language that we use in the college setting. We accommodate students, we grant or give access, whereas in the K through 12 system, they will modify and give modifications to curriculum and program outcomes, which isn't the case in the college setting. The other big law that I know that a lot of families may not know about is called FERPA, which is the Federal Education Rights to Privacy Act. And different colleges administer this law in different ways. Students that are college students can sign a FERPA waiver, which means that a parent, a guardian, a family member, or someone they deem can have access to basic information and mostly financial information. I will say at least once a semester, I will hear from a parent, well, I'm paying for college, right? So I should have access to everything. Here's the reality, you will not. Your student cannot give you carte blanche access to their anything in college, right? Some financial records, financial aid, scholarship information, maybe, but FERPA does protect the student in the way that they are independently making choices. The other thing that has come up is guardianship. We get a lot of questions in regards to guardianship. So parents, guardians will say, I have guardianship over my child, therefore I can make all academic decisions for them in a college setting. And there are few exceptions, but the reality again is that this is not the case, right? A student must be able to make their own decisions in a college setting. They can certainly have support as they meet with our offices and we talk about access, but guardianship, again, is not the be all end all. It allows me access to my child's information as they move forward.
Mm-hmm. So I'll just say that in the K through 12 system, with guardianship, that was probably the case. But again, we have different laws and students have a right to their privacy. And we treat students, even who have parents have guardianship, they have to be engaged in participating in decision making. So a parent can't just call and make appointments for their student, or, you know, the student has to be involved and engaged in the decision making. And even if it's with support, they still have to be involved. But I also wanted to say that Maria mentioned that K through 12 a lot of times focuses on success. And what I like to say is that when you enter college, it's now about having access to your curricular and co-curricular activities as a student with a disability. So it's not like these accommodations are going to help you be successful. It's these accommodations are going to give you access.
Yeah, and from the student perspective, accommodations change, like they change obviously in college. And the biggest change for me on my end was, you know, I had been in my IEP and 504 meetings kind of towards high school. I'm the eldest, so my parents didn't realize, like no one kind of told them like, you should be bringing her along to these things until I kind of weaseled my way in, and my mother was like, oh, she should be here. And so when I was trying to figure out like, okay, I'm going to college. Like what do I do to get accommodations? And I remember asking my guidance counselor, she's like, you can figure it out. And I was like, okay, like I don't know what I'm supposed to do, right? And my number one piece of advice for students would be to like reach out early for wherever you decide you are going to go, right? Say you've made your decision, reach out early to that accessibility coordinator, disability office. There's a variety of different ways they're called. Usually there's something disability office, accessibility coordinator, something along those titles that be on the website. You can find their contact information. You might have to search like what that may look like. And reach out early to them. I even reached out before I committed because I was like, hey, are you guys good with this stuff? Because I want to make sure before I commit, right? You guys are good with this. And I actually got on a Zoom call with her. She was lovely. Debbie is fantastic. That's my disability coordinator. And that's part of the reason I went where I went. But reaching out early gave me time to find all my documents again, because I had to send in like actual like diagnosis information to the accessibility office. I couldn't just send in my 504 plan. I tried that. That didn't work. It's not the same. It's no longer K through 12. So I digging back through and finding, that information. I ended up contacting my neurologist, and he wrote me a letter that was like, hey, she needs these things. She has this stuff. Because I got diagnosed with dysgraphia so long ago that I was like, I don't know where that paperwork even is anymore. And to, finding different pieces of information that took me a little while to get over the summer, but I was squared away by July once I figured out, okay, I need this thing and my college needs this from me, right? Because they all typically need similar, stuff, not just 504 plan. That's helpful to like figure out, okay, what's worked for you in the past. And then self-disclosing to my university, like, hey, okay, I have a disability. We have a sit-down conversation with my accessibility coordinator, and we talk about what's worked for me, what they can offer, that sort of stuff, what it kind of looks like and how it impacts me, having that language of how it impacts you to then talk to that person and be like, okay, this is what I need. And then, getting that information, taking it. And then the other biggest thing is once you get your accommodations, they sign you off and you're like, all right, perfect. Your teachers, your professors aren't automatically going to know. It is up to you to give them that information. Usually you get like a letter. And this has been for both the big university that I've taken classes at and my university. They send me a letter with the outlining like what my accommodations kind of are. And then I have to give that to my professors. I usually just email it to them. Most professors these days like an email because then it's just in their records. But the accessibility office is not going to just send it straight out to your professors if you need classroom accommodations. That will be, so that's the other big change from college, like high school K through 12 to college, is that you kind of have to give that information to professors for classroom stuff. But most of them are pretty chill. I feel like, they may have questions. Like I tell them, I'm obviously okay with talking about my disability. I do it all the time. I don't ever shut up about it, to be honest. But I tell them, hey, I can have a question, but you don't got to you can do it during office hours, where professors have a specific time for students to come in. They want students to come in. You can send it via email. You don't have to like tell in front of like the whole class, because that's not legal anyway. They can't make you do that. But yeah.
That's a good point. Disclosure is different. On the college level, we call the intake process sort of similar to an IEP 504 process. We call it an interactive process because, you know, a student has the right to say, yes, I would like this accommodation. No, I would not like this accommodation. So it's a two-way conversation. And of course, you know, dependent on the institution, most will allow a family member or an advocate to also be included in those meetings. And some institutions will do predetermination before you're an admitted student. Others will not. Because again, we've found that some students are doing accommodation shopping. And so it's really hard to kind of finalize accommodations depending on, you know, an individual's needs. And, you know, should be pretty consistent based on which college or university you attend.
And I would also say, don't wait until the first day of class to go to your disability services office with your documentation. It's going to be hectic and busy, and you know, you may have to wait longer than you would like to get an appointment to even get your accommodations in place.
I think we're good moving to the next slide.
Okay, it sounds like the tips include be proactive, understand how you will, as a student, have to assume a lot more responsibility, and look at how do you reach out to your professors and the Disability Services Office, and how do you follow their processes for everything. So those are really good tips. Let's move to the next slide. I did put in the chat that we have an upcoming webinar on the steps to accommodations, which will go into this in more detail. And I just wanted to share on this slide, we have a young student, college-age student in a college laboratory setting who uses a wheelchair. So even when you're thinking about college classes, the type of class might change from what you had in high school, and the accommodations would apply in those laboratory settings as well. The next topic that we're looking at is academic independence, which is a wonderful term, and I have to thank Cassandra for sharing that term. When we're talking about students with disabilities, because of those changes that occur from high school to college, what does the student have to know about themselves? What do the family members or those that are their support network have to understand about what is expected of the student? And how can the student look at different types of post-secondary education opportunities to find one that best fits what their level of academic independence is?
I could start this one. I think the biggest thing is, if I had to say anything as far as advocacy, motivation, college program deadlines, college catalog, those are the things that are written on the PowerPoint slide, I'd say this: the student needs to want to go to college. Hands down, if I always joke with students and say, if I had a nickel for every student that asked why they were in my office, I'd be rich and not be doing this job, right? They sometimes don't even know why they're registering with the disability office. So a student should know their own disability. I think that's the biggest thing. So many students cannot speak to their own history of accommodations and services that they've received. They don't know which level of classroom they may have had, you know, in the K through 12 system. Every state has a different, you know, level. They may have only experienced resource classes, or they were an AP honors student, but didn't know necessarily which accommodations they were receiving and why. We hear time and time again, oh, I've hidden this from my child. I don't want my child to feel like they're different. And sometimes that can pose its own challenges as they move forward into the college setting. So number one, know your own disability and be able to speak to your history of disability access. Also, you know, slow and steady wins the race. It's kind of an old way of thinking that every student needs to take 4 to 5 classes or 12 to 18 credits a semester in order to be successful and graduate in 4 years. Certain program requirements are 1000% going to tell you this, but that doesn't apply for every single student going for every single degree. And again, you should know your disability and how it impacts you, right? At NYU, you had to follow a formalized set of classes. At a community college, you can make it what you believe would be helpful. And we also see a lot of parent-student comparison. Parents will say, oh, well, when I was in college, this is what I did. And you are not in the learning environment any longer, and your student, right, has to persist. So let them start where they need to start. I always talk about myself, and I was a first-generation college student. I was not allowed to go away because we did not have the financial means. I went to a local 4-year institution, even though I was accepted to multiple colleges, and I started off as pre-med. And disability access did not exist in the same way as it did back in the day. I'm a middle-aged woman, so we've come a long way. Started pre-med, academic advisor told me first semester take pre-med chemistry. I certainly did not know how to navigate that, and it was the first time in my life that I ever failed something. And if I didn't have that motivation or kind of the, you know, push to say, okay, pre-med chemistry is not my thing, I need to reset and think about what this looks like as I move forward. So understanding that, you know, everybody's not perfect, whatever that looks like, everybody's not quote unquote normal, right? Everybody's learns differently. You can pick multiple paths. So a couple of things that I've included in there, but I would say, you know, what does the student want? What are they looking for? And to know their own disability and what they need for access.
And I'll say also, Marie made me think of some other things, like the transition to college doesn't, I mean, it could be a 4-year institution, it could be a 2-year community college, it could be a vocational school. So there are different types of post-secondary education that you can transition into. And when I think of academic independence, you also have to think about what is it that you need to be successful when you go away. Thinking about when you're at home doing your homework, are your parents sitting there making you do your homework? Or are you able to do that on your own without them telling you, like, get your homework done? Because when you go away, or even, you know, if you're staying at home, like your parents aren't going to tell you or sit there with you to make sure you're getting your homework done. So those are areas where you're going to have to learn how to be a little bit more independent, and seek out the resources at the school to see maybe you need to get tutoring, or maybe they have academic coaches that you could work with. So knowing yourself is going to be critical in your success.
Yeah, I can't stress using the resources enough, and I won't get into too much depth because we have our own webinar just for that, which I will also be on. But everyone uses the resources. I'm an academic coach. I've also been a coachee, so I've been on both sides. But everyone uses it. There is no shame in using the resources that are there. If you're going to a university, you're paying for those resources in some way. Use them, right? But I really did want to also stress Maria's point of know your disability, know the language. Language is freeing. Knowing how to describe, your life and how it impacts you in every which way, right? Like, I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until May of my senior year of high school. I flew under the radar because I had dysgraphia, and I got those accommodations helped me enough with the ADHD that I flew under the radar. But when I got diagnosed, I had language that I was like, oh, language that can help me explain, my experiences and, what I might need to my college accessibility person. And, being able to do that and express, okay, this is how it impacts me. These are the things. I got a new accommodation that I had never even had in high school because new, disability. And oh my God, changed my life. I was like taking tests became so much easier for me because of, some new accommodations that I had for this, because I was able to express, this is, ways that my disability impacts me. I wrote down a list because, you may know the words and expressing it casually to friends or, whatever, but then explaining it to like a person who is an adultier adult than me, right? This is their job, can sometimes be a little intimidating, right? So even writing down like exactly, oh, this is how it impacts me, so you don't forget, will make you feel a little bit more prepared and feel like, yeah, it impacts you. You are the expert in your own experience. No one else knows you better than you. So, knowing that language helps, not only makes you feel a little bit more like, yeah, this is me. This is part of who I am. Like, this is how it impacts me, and we'll be able to get you like on that road to whatever you want to do in college, whatever that may be. And the other thing, a little academic independence piece, I would say, check your email. Everything in college goes through your email. I cannot start your college one, not even your personal one, your college email. Everyone gets a college email. Check your email. That is the #1 way you will get communications from the college about like, events on campus. There's free donuts, right? Like that sort of thing. But also, deadlines are approaching. Like you might get a buzz from like Blackboard or Canvas or whatever system your, online system your university may use, and whatever that looks like. You may get notifications about that. You'll get emails from like professors, right? Like that is where communication happens. So check your email. If you don't do anything else but check your email. Like that is one of the biggest things. And then also just figuring out like what deadlines, that's where deadlines are going to be too, for like housing, like accommodations and stuff. Get those in early, right? So they can actually be accommodating, that sort of thing. Registering for classes, that's big deal. That'll be in your email. And your college, that kind of goes into the college catalog as well. Like every college, no matter what, they will have some sort of course catalog where you can go see what classes are available, but also when they're running, and like what's required for your program. So you can kind of get an idea of like, okay, these are, I can kind of space them out when classes are running, space out my semesters. So maybe you don't have to take 6 classes in a semester if you don't want to, right? You have time, space, right? Like, because that can be a lot. And the other thing is like, you're in college, like be open to a lot of different doors. It's like my, self-little motivation piece. You don't know what doors are going to open to you, right? Be open to whatever that may look like. I came into college, environmental science, woo, yeah. And now I'm doing geology and geoscience, and I love it. But I was open to kind of like what doors would, be, and talking, and being open about my disability and talking to people in my, department and things, has helped me like really communicate and like build up people that I know at my university who also experience similar things like me, right? So just, be open to, changes. College is new, it's different. Everyone's, coming to college experiencing, similar things, no matter what it looks like, right? It could look like, financial stress, class stress, right? Could all lament about one terrible professor. There is camaraderie together with that. So Yeah, know your disability, check your email and have fun.
One more thing Katie made me think about is when she was talking about being open, and being open when you're having that meeting with your disability office, because sometimes there are accommodations that you didn't have in high school, like Katie was saying, that would be very beneficial to meeting your needs based on how your disability impacts you. And also know that when you have that first meeting and put those accommodations in place, you can always go back and review those, or realize that maybe I do need something different. So don't think like that first meeting, this is it for the whole time you're in college. You can meet with your disability services office and talk about like maybe needing different or new accommodations.
I can't agree more. I am shaking my head in agreement. I think really, I mean, Katie said it so well. You know, I can't speak for every disability provider, but we really try to work hard to not be the barrier for students, right? If you meet with one disability specialist, coordinator, director, right? You've only met with one. And if that doesn't work well for you, right? Asked to meet with somebody else in the office, right? You have those rights. You don't have to keep reiterating your disability. So once you establish accommodations, you can keep them for as long as you do throughout your college experience, but you always have the right to change them moving forward. And again, it's how many students say that they've had a poor K through 12 experience, and they kind of set themselves up thinking that this is what their college experience is going to be. And we say, give us a chance, right? Because it may look very different for you. We don't categorize you in the same way that you're categorized in high school. Students in the classroom don't know your disability status unless you disclose. But again, it's that point of really, using the resources because they are there for you.
Absolutely. And thank you, Katie, for reminding everyone about the use your email. College disability service providers are saying that all the time to the students that they work with. So I don't think we can emphasize that enough. And that's sometimes a little different than the K-12, where it might not have been used as often, or the emails were going to the parents and not the students. So always checking that email can be the make or break for a lot of students in their classes. I want to share that on this slide, we have 4 individuals seated in a semicircle, and one of the individuals has a prosthetic leg. And the reason I like this slide is because it's in a college classroom and it shows the disability. But more importantly, we've been talking about the self-advocacy and we've been talking about the self-motivation. But as Katie had mentioned, it's not always just you going out there trying to do it all. You're going to make connections with your teachers. You're going to make connections with your classmates, and you can develop some interdependence in, reminding each other when is that paper due? When is the test coming up? And it's a sharing of it. So you may remember that there's a paper due and your classmate or your friend forgot. And then the next time you might have forgotten there's a test coming up next week and they remind you. So even though a lot of college side of things, you do things a lot more on your own, there is still some interdependence that does occur. Just want to remind everyone about college catalog and deadlines. Those are the things that the school, the offices like the office of the registrar is going to follow, and they won't make adjustments just because you forgot that you had to turn in your next semester class list by this date or apply for graduation by this date. So that is part of the academic independence as well. We have 6 minutes left. Let's move to the last slide, and I see that we have some questions that have come in. So while we're addressing these last questions, in conclusion, we'll have the questions answered, and if we have a final top tip from each of our panelists, that would be awesome. I've included the QR code on the slide for the survey on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side is the QR code for the National Center for College Students with Disabilities website. And below that is the DREAM website, which is our student organization. It's an online organization, but every campus that wants to set up a DREAM affiliate student organization through their student organization activities process can actually do that. So we have a couple of questions. Let's see. Thoughts on how your offices and delivery of services may be impacted by impending changes to the DOE, the Department of Education. Does any of the panelists want to consider talking about this, or do we just want to say, check with us in 6 months?
I will say that we're all closely monitoring it. For the most part, we're not going to change our practices around accessibility, disability, even around, you know, DEI. You're hearing a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and some will add accessibility, disability into that. For the most part, we're kind of waiting.
I would agree. As I've been sharing out when I'm asked in other settings, the ADA in Section 504 currently, and we have to caveat that, currently exist as laws that were established by Congress. And so at this point, our services and providing the accommodations that are legally required to not discriminate against people with disabilities on the basis of disability is still legally a requirement of all the institutions. There may be some adjustments that institutions put in place depending on what comes down from the administration. But I think what I've been hearing from a lot of institutions and colleagues in the field has been that this is still the law, and we're still doing what we need to lawfully do. I think what I would hope for institutions and for the students that attend those institutions is that they continue to address what the laws require as the foundation. These are the minimum things to not discriminate, but still looking at how can we put in more things that make it easier and not have to ask for so many accommodations, because things are more accessible just off the bat. Like when you build a new building, put in an elevator. If you can, put in two, because that elevator is going to break at some point. And you want to have a second elevator as a backup so that people who use mobility devices on the top floor can still exit. One of the questions I had for our panelists is quickly, I'm just checking my time here, in the next 3 minutes, if you could just give me a 20-second, what is your one top tip that you want our audience to walk away with?
I will say, know your disability and how it impacts you, and be able to articulate your needs clearly so that the Disability Services Office understands them, or if you're meeting with a professor. So that would be my tip. Know your disability and how it impacts you.
That would be exactly my tip, would be know your disability and how it impacts you. Number one thing. But I guess my other tip, you get a free one, would be contact your accessibility office early, and even before you maybe decide on a university, see if you can get email them, or maybe they'll even set up a Zoom, because that will give you an idea of how, accommodations may look like at that university and kind of give you a feel for, okay, I can, yeah, this person, like, you know, especially if it's a smaller university, they may have like 1 or 2 people. Can I work with this university? Do they have experience? Do they know, have they accommodated someone like me before? Right. And kind of get the in contact early, because it'll make, you know, that first semester way easier.
I would say follow what you need, right? You know, as a traditional student transitions from high school to college, sometimes they're still in the mindset that they need to do what their peers are doing. And I would say your peers aren't paying your bills, right? Go with your own path. So if college is for you, right, find the things that are most important to you and in the right setting for you. That becomes a key factor, and I would say is a large reason why students start, but they don't necessarily finish, or they transfer because they didn't have those top 5 priority things in their mind. And the sky's the limit, right? So go and experience college and get involved and be your best self.
Thank you, audience. We are at the top of the hour. If you have not completed the survey using the QR code, don't sweat. It will be sent out in the follow-up email after we conclude this session. So you will have a chance to give us some feedback, tell us how our presentation went, and tell us any new topics that you want us to set up a presentation for. I do want to thank our presenters. Excellent information, lots of a wealth of experience and knowledge. And thank you to each and every one of the attendees for giving us your time to learn a little bit more about this presentation. At this point, I'm going to stop the presentation.